Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fair 64, the podcast about video game news, occurrences, first impressions, and so much more. This episode is going to be a bit different than usual. I wanted to get back and start doing this again to try and get back to normal a little bit here. For those of you who don't know, my family suffered a pretty sudden death in the family, and it's just been really hard. And I appreciate everyone's condolences and anyone who gave to the GoFundMe on my Discord. It has all the information there for what not exactly happened, but kind of what the gist of it is. So I appreciate all that. This episode, I just like I said, I just kind of want to get something out there and try and get back to doing this again. I know it's only been like a week off, but it feels like it's been a year at this point. It's been a very rough couple of weeks. And I've also put the Twitch streams on hold for right now. I do plan on getting back to those this coming week, probably with the Ferret Cafe episode that I've been planning for a while. That'll be like my return, I guess, quote unquote return stream. So if you want to check that out, that should be on Thursday around 8 p.m. I'm sorry, 8 p.m. But any other updates or anything like that will be in the Discord. And so, without further ado, let's start off with what I've been playing this past week. There's probably going to be no goofs and gaffs and gizmos or whatever in this episode. I will still try to put timestamps down below, but we'll see how I'm feeling by the end of this. So the first game I want to talk about is Balatro, which is a card game kind of based on poker in a way, where you try to essentially get more chips than the opponent you're going against. They don't play cards, only you play cards. So, like the first round is like, I get 300 chips. So there's different hands that you can play, like high card, which is, it just counts the highest card in the hand played. Two pair, which is two cards. I'm sorry. It's two pairs of the same card, so two queens and two kings, or two threes and two fives, Three of a kind, full house, which is the same three cards and then a separate pair. A straight, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. The consecutive numbers in a row. A straight flush, which is 5 cards in a row with the same suit. So heart, diamond, spade, or fucking club. Apologize. And then there's 4 of a kind, pretty straightforward. And then there is, I think the best that you can get is that straight flush with the same suit and stuff like that. So, and all those have different multipliers to them. So the high card is only like a ×1 multiplier. The two pair is like a 2 times multiplier. The full house is like a 3 times multiplier, and then the next is a 4th. And it is a roguelite deck builder. So you add cards to your deck with special abilities sometimes, or maybe other times you'll just want to add like a new high card to your deck. You can open up these little packs throughout your run. You earn money from each hand you play. So you can buy these packs of like standard cards. There's also tarot cards and planet card packs. The tarot cards enhance cards in your deck, so it turns them lucky, which gives them bonuses. It can turn them into metal, which has other bonuses. Gold gives you more coins. Glass gives you more multiplier. But the glass cards can also break if there's like a 1 in 5 chance they break or something like that. So it's a lot of that where it's just like You earn chips from the different point values of the cards, and then you multiply them with the multiplier. So you could have like 100 card, you could have like all face cards, which are worth 10 or 11 each, and multiply them. Like let's say you have a base of like 100 chips, and then you multiply them by the multiplier, which could be 52. So now instead of getting just 100 chips, you get 5,200 chips or something like that. Something crazy. Actually, that's wrong math. No, that is right. No, it'd only be 520 chips, but still, you get the point. On top of it all are these Joker cards that enhance your hand after you play cards, usually. So at the end of the round, it scores all your cards, and the Joker cards come in and they give you extra points. So there's one Joker card for each suite that gives you like a ×4 multiplier per that suite that you play. So if you get the diamond one, you have 5 diamond cards. Well, that's 5 times 4. You get that much more multiplier from playing that hand. There's other ones that give bonuses to face cards or certain types of hands that you play. Like there's certain cards that add extra multiplier or chips if you play a pair or a 2-pair or whatever. There's some pretty kooky Joker cards as well. There's one that like changes every hand you play. It gives you different multipliers. Sometimes it can be 0 or all the way up to 100. So it's kind of like a random chance kind of thing. There's other ones that just give you more money. There's other ones that are like really crazy that do way too much that I'm not going to explain here. But they all appear randomly in the shop at the end of the round. So choosing the right Joker cards for your play style is going to be beneficial to you. If you have a lot of spade cards in your deck, you want to get the Joker cards that enhance those kind of cards. If you do a lot of 2-pair, you want to make sure that you level up, you get the Joker cards that work with 2-pair or doubles or whatever. On top of that, there's the planet cards you can get. Those ones enhance the types of hands you play. So they're just kind of like the different planets in the solar system. The one that I use the most is the 2-pair one because 2-pair is pretty common, and it's also a pretty low value hand. It only does ×2 at level 1. So the more that you upgrade that, the more likely that you'll be able to get farther in the game. So each time you go around, there's 3 players to beat in each set of games. The first 2 are kind of like normal ones that there's nothing special going on. But the third one is like a boss, and they have like a special ability associated with them. Now, like I said, it's not like the other player is playing against you. They just have something that's going to really try and mess up your hand. So one of the most detrimental ones is every card is drawn face down, so you don't know what kind of cards you got. So that does, I mean, it's crazy. It's a tough one, but there are ways around it. I forgot to mention this, but you can also discard cards as well. You have a certain number of times you can discard in each round, or each hand, I guess you could say. So when you draw your base cards, you have 5 discards, I think, base, or 4 discards. If you use all 4 of those discards in the first hand, well, you're kind of screwed because the rest of the rounds you won't be able to discard. But if you make it to the end of that hand or round and move on to the next one, you get your discards back. So on bosses like that, where all the face cards are drawn face down, or every card you draw is face down, you can still swap out cards every hand up to a point to try and get around it. And those types of hands definitely, like the ones where the cards are drawn face down, definitely lean towards the suits. Having 5 of a certain suit. But it's something you need to strategize around because it's all random. Sometimes you don't get that one in your 8 antes, they're called. And I mean that's the base. That's the gist of the game. I think that Balatro is like, it's very comparable to something like Inscription, but it's not like 1 for 1. Obviously, Inscription was a very different card battler, with much more going on. But Balatro kind of takes that idea of a card builder where you're just trying to get multiplier up and whatever, and it does a great job at putting that to work in the context of like a poker game, which has gotten them into a little bit of trouble. It came out this past week that the game was taken down from certain storefronts because the age rating was changed to 18 plus in Europe by the PEGI board, which is the European rating system. And on Twitter, they came out and they were like, hey, it's been temporarily removed from sale from a number of digital stores on console platforms and stuff like that, digital platforms. Presently, they can't estimate when it will be fixed because the original rating for the game was 3 plus in Europe, which is like not. I mean, that's like hardly anything. I think PEGI 18 obviously is 18 plus, but PEGI 3 is like close to a kid's game almost, you know. But they're trying to get the rating put back down because in the message that they received, it said that they had like, you know, there was like gambling in it, and of course gambling in Europe and many other places immediately bumps the game up to, you know, that 18 plus rating or M rating, right? But that, obviously this game is it does use some things from poker like the hands and stuff like that, but I mean it doesn't have any gambling or anything in it at all. There's actually no microtransactions. There's no like the in-game currency. You don't buy anything with it. It's just for each run in the roguelite mode. It's just it's kind of crazy that the game was taken down. They're hoping then that they'll be able to get it fixed in a little while, maybe hopefully the next few weeks, because anyone who plays the game, you know, because on a surface level you go, oh, it's a game about poker, and you earn money and you place bets. You don't really place bets. You don't place bets at all. The opponent says, "Hey, this is how much this is how many chips you need to get up to." So at the base level, it's like, "Oh, it's a poker game. We need to rate this higher." You know, I don't know if the person who rated it higher just didn't play it. They just saw that it was rated 3 plus, and they were like, "Oh, that must be wrong." I don't know, but anyone who plays the game can definitely see like. Yeah, it really has nothing to do with poker other than the types of hands that you can play and it being playing cards, you know. So that's that. And Balatro, I was about to say this earlier. Balatro is like one of those games that came out this year that it's kind of like the early must play, and it's probably going to be pushed under the rug as the year goes on, just because it came out in February. It's a pretty early game. And if the game does have staying power, I will definitely keep playing it throughout the rest of the year. So far, I'm having a great time with it. There's multiple decks with different kind of seeds that you can use. So it's not always the same every time you play. Actually, even using the same deck, I haven't had a similar play or a similar run. I have beat the game once, but as you know, in these rogue games, you know, beating the game once doesn't mean that you're done with the game. It just means that you've beaten the game once, and you can now maybe do something a little bit harder, or maybe you can try doing it in other ways. So some decks will actually give you extra cards in your hand, extra discards, extra Joker cards. Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. And of course, as you unlock and discover more Joker cards and do more things in the game, you'll unlock new cards to find in the store and stuff like that. So it's a very nice gameplay loop. And in terms of roguelite deck builders, it's definitely one of the best so far. I mean, obviously Inscription is above this game, but there is a lot to really appreciate about Balatro and what it does. And in terms of deck battlers, roguelite games, it's definitely one of my favorites this year so far. I mean, it's only 3 months in, but yeah, it's just it's been great, and I would definitely recommend it if you enjoy these types of games. And you know, as I always say when I recommend games, like everyone's different or should be different. Something that I like, maybe you don't like. And I'm one of those people who I like to kind of expand and try and bring in as many genres as I can to my life. And Balatro wasn't one of those games that I was afraid was not going to be good, because it did. You know, I coming off of Inscription being my game of the year from a couple years ago, I knew that this was going to be a game that was going to hook me. And yeah, I give it the title of an early must play. It's definitely really good. I didn't give it a perfect score when I rated it, but it was pretty close. And I think the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about right now is longevity. Inscription has a lot more going on, a lot more story beats, a lot more in-depth stuff. It gets pretty crazy. Balatro does seem to be a bit one note in a way where it's like, the game is what it is. It tells you exactly what it is. There's obviously different things you can do per your run, but we'll see if I have any trouble with that in the future. Also, I was playing Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered. I originally was not going to get it because it was a bit pricey. $30 definitely is a high bar to clear with something like this. That's it's like a 5-hour game, and it's a remaster of an old DOS game. And I do believe it does have a version on Steam. I actually think I own that version of Steam. But the remastered is definitely worth playing, especially if you're a Star Wars fan or even a boomer shooter fan. Because that's essentially exactly what it is. It's a Star Wars boomer shooter. I've been watching a couple videos about it because I really never really looked into the game. I know I think I have it on Steam. I swear I have it on Steam. But I never played it. I knew that it was connected to the Jedi universe, like Jedi Outcast 1 and 2 or Jedi Academy. But I never knew the impact it had on gaming as a whole. And when I started to watch these videos, I go, oh wow, that's actually pretty impressive. So this was obviously it ran in a different engine than Doom, but obviously it's very similar to Doom. But Doom couldn't make multi-level areas. And Star Wars Dark Forces was one of the first boomer shooters. Actually, it was the first boomer shooter to have multiple levels to an area. So instead of having to go up an elevator to get to the next part or respawn in a new room or whatever, you could actually just take it, walk up some stairs and have a 2-story building or 3-story building. It's also one of the first boomer shooters to let you look up and down, let you crouch. All that kind of stuff. So it's very cool to learn the history of the game. Obviously, there's more, but I'm not going to get into super detail here. If you want to check out any video about it, there's one by G-Man Lives, who did a good breakdown of that, and of course, there's other more technical breakdowns as well. But Dark Forces Remastered, obviously, it's built from the ground up, but it uses some of that. It uses the same sprites and artwork, just high res. The studio, I think it's Night Dive, who made this one. They made it very clear that they did not use any AI upscaling for the sprites and stuff like that, which is great. It's all done by hand. The level design is obviously exactly the same from the original game, so if you played that old game, it'll be very familiar territory, just it'll look a lot better. And I'm not saying that the old games looked bad. I think there's a very nice charm to those old era games, but obviously if you want to play those games now, it's a bit rough it's a bit rough around the edges. So, they improved a bunch of different things about the game, visuals being one of them. Some of the cutscenes, I think I pointed this out when they originally showed off the game in a Nintendo Direct or something like that. The cutscenes, they're hand drawn and whatever, and it just kind of clashes with the style of the game. I do wish that they had gone with more of the pixel art that was in the original game. I feel like it does lose a bit of that charm when instead of Darth Vader being this pixel guy turning around, it's like a smooth, hand-drawn kind of animation. And I do think the game does lose a little bit of that charm when you do that. And even though they are nice, don't get me wrong, I do like the hand-drawn stuff. Like I said, it does, after you watch that hand-drawn segment, you get put into a game that has, the little stormtrooper sprites who are a little bit pixelated, and the world around you is just this high-res rendering of the area. And I feel like because they do have some cutscenes that are in the in-game engine, of the ship leaving or something happening, a wide shot of the executor or something like that. And then it transitions to the hand drawn artwork. It's just a bit jarring, I guess you could say. The game itself is still runs really great. I think some of the level design is obtuse. It's an old style game. It's remade faithfully to the original. Maybe could have had a little bit more direction in terms of order of objectives. Because when you're playing the game, you can actually totally pass an objective and have to backtrack all the way back. There's some levels that are really straightforward that you don't need that help with, but there was a sewer level early on that was good, but really confusing. Later on, there was another level that I was kind of struggling to get through because it just was a really weird way to get through the level. I think you had to like blow up a couple walls and stuff like that, which they obviously set up. They show the wall being blown up, but it's just one of those things. It's one of those things that you kind of think about passively, and even though you're trying your best to think about the game in oldie times sense, it doesn't really work out all the time. But in general, this remaster is great. They did a really good job with it. One of my other criticisms, though, is that the soundtrack for the game is kind of scuffed at this point. You can really hear it on the opening title screen. The MIDI, instruments are behind the MIDI drums or whatever. So the rhythm is all off. Like, when instruments come in, it's like a half a second off or something like that. Hopefully they'll be able to address that in the patch, but it's really awkward. During gameplay, you don't really hear it. It's one of those things that's kind of in the background, and once the music kind of swells while you're doing stuff, you can start to notice it. But it's really bad on the main title screen when you know how the song is supposed to sound. It's the Star Wars theme. There's really no ifs or ands or buts about it. It should sound like the Star Wars theme. And in the original game, you can actually switch between the original game and this one, or I guess the original style in this one. It does sound a lot better. So something happened in that conversion with all the MIDI instruments and stuff like that. That's another thing too that the game was known for, was its flowing soundtrack. So you kind of know how Banjo-Kazooie changes its soundtrack from while you go into different areas. It's very cool. It's one of the reasons why I love that game so much. Dark Forces also did that back in the day. It was a pioneer in that, where when the action started heating up or you started doing different things, the soundtrack would change without a pause. It would just kind of morph into the new song, and that is still standard in this game as well. So very cool. If you want to check it out, I do recommend Dark Forces Remastered. I think it's great. It just has some things here or there that are kind of irking me a bit. I think the music is a big one, and some of the level design, obviously, but I don't want them to necessarily change the level design, because in a remaster like this, I feel like it's better to just keep it the way that it was. So that's not like a diss on the remaster. It's more of a diss of the original game. And even then, it's it's an early first-person shooter. I'm not going to put too much into that, but I'm still playing through it right now. It is a little bit, it's like 5 hours long, so it's not going to take you one sitting, but maybe 2 or 3 sittings if you're taking a little while there. But in general, for $30, I think it's a bit pricey, but it's definitely a fun time, and it definitely harkens back to the origins of the later games that I really love. I love Jedi Outcast 2. I think that's one of the best Star Wars games ever made, and this game, Star Wars Dark Forces, really sets up a lot of what you see in those games. Some of the weapons, some of the level design, the shield system and stuff like that. It's very cool. Some of the upgrades and power-ups too. So definitely a nice walk in the past, and it's pretty fun. So I'll keep playing that. The last game I want to talk about, I know I played more this week than what I'm talking about here, but Penny's Big Breakaway. This is the Shadow Drop from the Nintendo Direct, which I will talk about after this. It is, as you may have guessed, from the same people as Sonic, what's it? Sonic, oh my gosh. It's the Sonic game that Sonic Mania. Yeah, Sonic Mania. It's obviously much different than Sonic Mania. It's a 3D platformer in the same vein as those old school 3D platformers. It has a lot to do with momentum. So it does take a minute to kind of get used to the controls and stuff like that. But essentially, your yo-yo is like magical, and it eats the clothes off of the king. And now you're on the run from the king's penguin forces, and you just kind of gotta do platforming and stuff like that. There's some boss fights sprinkled in there. Gotta run away from the penguins, make sure they don't catch up to you. There's a few collectibles to find in there. There's like a currency to find, and there's also a couple different collectibles. It's been really fun so far. I haven't had a lot of time to play it, which is why I'm not going to talk about it in depth. But for the most part, I think that it's definitely worth checking out. It's a nice, like, I think the price is pretty good on it, and for it being a shadow drop game at a Nintendo Direct, also pretty cool. I'm very satisfied with it. I'm glad that it came out, because there was a while where there was just like no information about when the game was coming. There was just more information about like how the game plays, and very cool, very fun game so far. Okay, let's talk about the Nintendo Direct from a couple weeks ago here. I believe it was on like February 22nd or something like that. And the presentation, I mean, this wasn't like a Nintendo Direct like a Nintendo. This was a partner showcase, so a lot of people went into this with not expecting much, and I was kind of in that group where I was like, what are they really going to show off, But I'm pleasantly surprised by this Direct. There was a couple things that I enjoyed seeing. Let's just jump into it. So Grounded is coming to the Switch on the 16th of April. It's also coming to other platforms as well. This is the game where the kids get shrunk down. You have to battle ants and spiders and bees and stuff, and it's like a survival crafting game. I've heard good things about it. Next game was Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist, which I believe is a sequel to Ender Lilies. It's essentially a game where you like play as this like little kid, and the demons, these like creatures, these shadow ghosty creatures fight for you instead of you fighting. It's a cool concept. I never got around to playing the original one, but Odom K, a friend of the channel, was playing it, and it looked pretty good. I think that it looked kind of cool. So if you want to check that out, that's coming later this year. A Ranger, a role puzzling adventure. This is a pretty cool one. I like the idea of this one a lot. So those games, those like puzzle games where you move the tiles to make a picture. It's kind of like that, except you move like this character around on the map with like these with the like how you would move those kind of pieces around. Not exactly, because it's not like there's a certain, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a conveyor belt instead of like one of those kind of puzzles, but it's very similar to one of those puzzles because you move the pieces around to make paths and stuff like that. You also move the tiles around to push things and like move swords into enemies, or items onto buttons and stuff like that. I think it's a very cool concept. I love this idea, and I'll probably check it out when it comes around. It's supposed to launch sometime in summer, so if you want to check that out, A Ranger, a role puzzling adventure, that's coming out later this year. Unicorn Overlord. This is apparently a pretty good game, I guess. I think people were saying that they're pretty excited for this. Unicorn Overlord is a pretty bad name for a game, in all honesty. Also, I don't think there's a single unicorn in this entire thing. It more so looks like Fire Emblem in a way, where you move your character around on the map and then you do some turn-based battles. But the pixel art looks great. There's some cool character designs in there. That's coming out March 8th if you want to check that out. Monster Hunter Stories. This is actually a remaster or something of the Monster Hunter Stories game that came out a couple years ago. There was a Monster Hunter Stories 2 on the Switch, but this is the original one that was never put on the Switch. I think they added some stuff to it to give it a bit more, junk in the trunk, I guess you could say. It looks fine. I'm not interested in it, but if you want to check that out, it's coming to Switch this year, summer. Disney Epic Mickey is back, and it's a remaster. So this is going to be called Rebrushed, which is a weird name, let's be honest. But the game looks great. I remember playing this game. It was a fun one, a fun little 3D platformer with Mickey Mouse. He goes into his mirror and he picks up the wizard's paintbrush and kind of causes havoc. And there's like this dark monster you gotta take down. But yeah, I mean it looks great. I think that they did a great job like reimagining this for newer hardware. And yeah, I think that it'll be a pretty fun time if you want to check that out. That's coming sometime in 2024. Nostalgia and all that. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. This is coming the 21st of June. I don't really know much about this game. It kind of looks. I think it's from the same people who did Persona, or it's like a series that's adjacent to Persona. It has a similar art style, and I think it has like a similar style to like using like creatures to battle for you, kind of like I don't know, kind of like Pokemon, I guess, but more so in the vein of like Persona, I guess. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I mean it looks fine. I'm not gonna complain about that. Probably the biggest thing for me personally is the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. I know a lot of people are very excited about this. This comes out the 14th of March, so it's not too far away. This is a complete. It's not like a remaster. It's like an HD re-release of the first two of the original two Battlefront games. So Battlefront 1, which was pretty good in its own right. The one thing that it was missing was like space combat and like playable heroes. And the second game fixed all that. It had space battles. It had ground combat. It has heroes. It has all these different game modes that are really, really good. This version of the game is going to have the Xbox exclusive skins characters for Kit Fisto and Asajj Ventress, which is pretty cool. Funny thing is they really don't show much of the first game. But I think the first game really, I mean, I don't think many people are going to be playing the first game, let's be honest. The second game has a whole, a fleshed out story mode with the 501st clone troopers and stuff like that. The original game does have a story mode and stuff, but it's not super fleshed out. It was very much like a proof of concept kind of game. And then the second game came around and that was the main pulling point. I almost wish that they would combine like the two games together in a way. Like have the Naboo maps, have the the stuff like that. But I'm glad that we're getting this. I'm very interested to see what the trophies are going to be like for this game, because the Steam version doesn't have any achievements. The original games obviously came out on like the PS2 and Xbox and stuff like that. It doesn't have any achievements or anything like that, trophies. So I'm very interested to see what that's all about. I'll probably be buying this game on 2 different platforms, PC and PlayStation. I'll be honest with you. And already it's shot up to like the #1 pre-orders for, after it was announced, it was like the #1 pre-order game above like Final Fantasy and stuff like that for a week. So that's actually pretty cool. But it just goes to show that good games never die, and Battlefront 2 is definitely a game that really truly never dies. Also, I forgot to mention this in this version of the games, they're bringing back the multiplayer. I think it's 64 or 84, something like that, player multiplayer. They've also added in a new maps for heroes to use. So instead of it just being Tatooine, you can play on a couple of different maps. And like I said, there's the multiplayer's back and stuff like that. I do hope that the Galactic Conquest is also multiplayer enabled, because that was a really fun mode. And then also the campaign would be pretty cool to do co-op as well. But I don't think they've released any information about that yet. But yeah, that comes out March 14th. I'm very excited for that. This is a game that me, Greedy Waffles, we used to play all the time on like the PS2, and it came to PC, and they re-upped the servers on the PC, which was great, but it never really played, great. I know that there's a whole modding community for it as well, so but that is very cool to see. I think it's going to be about $30, which is a pretty good price to have all this new stuff and games or whatever. South Park Snow Day has a trailer. It's coming out March 26. It's like a 3-player PvP game. You team up in teams of 3. I don't know if it's going to be good per se, but I think the price point is actually pretty fitting. It's like a $40 game at launch. This might go the way of a few different games that we've seen in the multiplayer genre, but we'll see. I don't want to say too much. Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream. I don't even remember seeing this. I don't have anything to say. Enter the world of Sword Art Online that exists beyond memories. All right, whatever. Gundam Breaker 4, a new Gundam game coming around. This one looks like it's kind of like a cross between like a chibi kind of thing and then like an actual mech builder. I watched Gundam when I was a kid. It never really stuck with me though. I never really played the games. I played like that. There was like a custom Robo game for GameCube that I had. It might have been a Gundam game actually. But this Gundam Breaker game is coming in 2024. It looks like it's just a mech battling game, which is, big. I think that's what people want, mech battling with the Gundam series. Here's another one that I was pretty excited about, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. I'm not like the biggest Monkey Ball fan, but I do love when these games come out because people do like challenges and stuff on them, which I really like watching. The original game was on the GameCube, so that's how far we've come with this series. I do have a couple Monkey Ball games. I never really dived into them fully. This one looks pretty good though. This one has like a battle royale mode where everyone tries to do a level, and you see who can get to the end, the fastest. There's I guess also another game mode called Banana Hunt and Robot Smash, which also looks pretty fun. The Monkey Ball games are kind of known for like there's mini games, so hopefully there's a couple more mini games mixed in there that are good. But yeah, just a new Monkey Ball game coming June 25th. Pretty cool. World of Goo 2 got a trailer. This is coming the 23rd of May, which is nice, not too far away. The original World of Goo is actually really good, and I think that a lot of people are going to sleep on this title simply because it's like, what's World of Goo? I didn't even know there was a first World of Goo. Well, let me tell you right now, it's been a while. It was like one of those OG Steam kind of games. But the original game is still really good, and this one looks like it really builds upon what that first game had, and I think it's gonna, like I said, it's probably gonna be a game that a lot of people sleep on because they're just go, oh, what the heck is a World of Goo 2? Well, I can tell you right now, World of Goo is a pretty good first game, and the second one looks pretty good too. Fantasy Life 1, The Girl Who Steals Time. This arrives on the 10th of October. It looks like it's kind of like based on Animal Crossing almost in a way, but there's some like monster battling and stuff like that. It's kind of what you expect. Another Crab's Treasure got a release date coming out April 25th, $30. It's also coming to Game Pass if you didn't know. They revealed the voice act. There's a voice acting in the game. One of the creatures that you meet, one of the friends I guess you meet, is voiced by the YouTuber Michael Reeves, which is pretty cool. I'm a pretty big fan of his content. But the world, this trailer was less about the combat and more about the world, and I think that was a really great idea because that little gameplay demo that we played last year just kind of had like a basic kind of underwater layout, but it looks like there's a lot more to the game, which is great. Definitely excited about that. Once again, it's coming out April 25th. Penny's Big Breakaway, already talked about that. It had a shadow drop, so it released the same day as the Direct, which is really, really cool. I really like those kind of announcements, especially for a game this big. Like this is a pretty big game coming out, so that was pretty cool. Suika game, the game that took the nation by storm, got a multiplayer DLC. It's actually a paid DLC, but you can now play with a friend online and try and beat their score, which is pretty cool. I think there's also like a battle mode too, where like you try and mess up the opponent as well, which is kind of fun. Love that kind of stuff. So Suika game multiplayer, I think it's like $5 or less or something like that. Pepper Grinder got a release date. It's coming March 28th. If you don't know what Pepper Grinder is, it's a game that I've talked about a couple times. You essentially are using like this drill to go through ground and stuff like that. That's kind of like the main gimmick. Of course, there's still like on foot stuff and like that, but the main thing is using this drill to kind of go through these areas, and it really looks like it's going to be a really fun game. I'm really excited to play that. Really fun pixel art adventure. Looks like there's going to be some really crazy boss battles and level design in there. Definitely very excited about this. Keep an eye on this one. Pocket Card Jockey Ride On. This is one that was kind of a surprise. I had not thought of this fucking game since the 3DS, obviously, and even then I didn't. I'd never played it. I just kind of was like watching my friend play it on his DS, and this is like a. I don't even know how to describe this game. It's kind of crazy. It's a crazy game. It's like a horse racing game, and you do like these little mini things to give you boosts and stuff. It's hard to describe really. But this is a fully remastered version of the 3DS game. It's available right now. I don't believe it has a physical release, which is a shame, but the digital release is good enough, I guess. But it's kind of a kooky, crazy game. You do lots of kooky and crazy things. I don't know how to describe it. Snufkin, Melody of Moomin Valley. This is like a kind of like a water paint color kind of game. It's got some really cool designs for the characters. I think it's based off of like a popular kids book, if I'm remembering correctly. But it looks like it's just a top-down adventure game. No combat or anything like that. But it looks pretty fun. That's coming March 7th. Tales of Kenzura Zhao. This is coming April 23rd. They revealed this game, I think, at the Game Awards. The guy who was developing it came on stage and was talking about the game. This is an EA original, new IP, which is, becoming less rare, but it almost like the gameplay really does remind me of Prince of Persia that just came out, The Lost Crown. It has some combat in there, some platforming. It looks very flashy, I will say. Like, if people were complaining about how Prince of Persia really doesn't have too much like color to it, I guess you could say, this game is definitely like it's got everything in there that you kind of want. Lots of fun visuals. Looks like some great set pieces. Some fun styles of visuals in there. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on this one. I probably won't buy it like right away, but I think it's a very interesting looking game. That's coming April 23rd. Kingdom Come Deliverance Royal Edition. This was a really weird one. I don't know how many people actually care about this game anymore, but this was a pretty interesting medieval sim game. I didn't get far in it myself because it is just very weird. It's a game that like when they show off the game, it looks really cool, but when you actually play the game, like there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's a very, it's a very epic adventure, I guess, but it starts off in this really slow place, and like you have to really work to train and stuff like. It's just one of those things that it's for certain people, not me. But this is finally coming to the Switch on the 15th of March. Contra Operation Galuga. This is actually good in a physical edition from Limited Run Games if you want to check that out. This is it's what you expect. It's Contra. It's a 2D shoot 'em up. Looks like there's a couple of new people to play as. This looks a lot better than that last Contra game that came out. That was more of like a top-down game. And that's coming the 12th of March. There was a sizzle reel that had Pentiment in it, which is another Xbox game coming to Switch. This one was a pretty cool game. I never finished it. I probably will get around to finishing it here eventually. But you essentially play as like this artist who like draws pictures for people, and you get kind of swept up in like this conspiracy. The style of the game is really nice. Also, like when people are different nobility, they have fancier and fancier writing to them, which is also really cool. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it definitely is worth playing in the end. And that's coming to Switch on November 15th. It's also coming to PlayStation, I'm pretty sure. And then they had some new Switch games coming to the Nintendo Switch Online service. Not Switch games, older games, rare games. Which I'm pretty excited about most of these. I'm not like a super big fan of Battletoads, but having Battletoads Super Nintendo game on the system is pretty cool. Also, the original Killer Instinct, which is a fighting game. RC Pro Am is a racing game, and Snake Rattle and Roll is also coming around. That's probably one of the first rare games. And then obviously my favorite out of the bunch is Blast Corps, which I know it's an early N64 game. I've been playing it a little bit, and I gotta be honest, like it plays pretty well still, even to this day. Like it was actually playing pretty. The only vehicle that I was having trouble with was the dump truck, but I've kind of always had trouble with the dump truck, so it's not like anything new. But I'm really glad they brought back this game. I Blast Corps is kind of like a hidden gem, I think, on the N64. And I know it's an early game, and I know it's kind of rough around the edges here or there, but I think for the most part, everything controls pretty well. It's a pretty interesting game. It's got some challenge to it too after you get past like the first set of missions. So try it out. I think that most people will enjoy it. Like I said, I know that the dump truck is probably the worst vehicle in the game, and they force it on you a couple times, but it's still really fun. I really enjoy it. And then finally, they ended off this showcase with Endless Ocean Luminous. We haven't had an Endless Ocean game since the Wii. This is coming May 2nd, 2024. This is like, this is one of those kind of like games where it's just like a chill game. You used to, kind of, go around the world and on the Wii, and it kind of showed off like the graphical prowess, I guess, of the Wii at the time. This game, it doesn't look bad, but it also looks like it's kind of stuck on, back in time. Like not all the visuals are great. Like, I think the one thing that's really cool about this is you can team up with like 25 people to kind of explore the area, find new species of fish and stuff like that. Also, it has like this, I guess, rogue incentive where every time you load up the game, the ocean changes, which is kind of cool. So it's very interesting to get another one of these. It's coming May 2nd. I agree with the general consensus that this probably should have been like a launch game for the next Nintendo console. Give it the graphical boost it kind of needs. But I think the game still looks good in general. I don't think it looks bad at all, but it's just one of those things where it's like we could have really showed off like the next visuals for the next system, and we all know that it's coming around next year at this point. I think that's a pretty obvious thing, but we'll see. We'll see. So that was the Nintendo partner showcase from this past few weeks. I thought it was pretty good. I gave it a B plus. I'm surprised that there's so many people who are kind of down about this one. Oh, they only had one good thing in there. I don't know. I felt like it was actually pretty decent, all things considered, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. A surprise, in the Japanese version of the showcase, they released Mother 3 on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And if you don't know the story behind Mother 3, essentially people in America have been asking for an English version of the game for years and years and years and years and years. And Nintendo just won't do it. They won't port it over to English-speaking audiences or other audiences in Europe and in North America. We got Mother 2, which was Earthbound. And then after Earthbound was a success, they released Earthbound prequel, or whatever it's called, which was the original game. But they never brought Mother 3 over, which is kind of sad. They also are releasing some plushies for the game. I think they're Japan exclusive again, which is kind of crazy. So I guess if you have like a Japanese account on the Switch, you can access the game, but it won't be translated, so you gotta learn Japanese. There was also a Pokemon Presents this past week. Most of it was just app content, which isn't a bad thing per se, but it's like one of those things like at this point it's like kind of a meme to have Pokemon Cafe and Pokemon Go show up every single one of these. The one thing that was kind of cool was the Terra battle raids in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where you can try and catch the Mighty Venusaur, a Mighty Blastoise, or a Mighty Charizard, which is kind of cool. In Pokemon Go, they're doing a crossover event with the Pokemon Limited series called Horizons, which was a really nice. I think it's on Netflix. It was a pretty nice series. It was like a 3-episode thing. It was really cool. The animation was great, and I thought the story was charming. So that's cool. They added they added a couple things to the Pokemon Go. You can set on. Hold on, let me. Here. Pokemon wearing party hats are appearing, which I think happened before. But Pikachu wearing the sailor's cap or whatever wearing Cap's hat you'll be able to find him on Pokemon Go. Pokemon Sleep is adding the 3 like legendary Pokemon Arcanine. Oh frick, Suicune. Okay, it's Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. I forgot their names for a second. You will be able to find these legendary Pokemon in your Sleep app from time to time, starting March 2024. Pokemon Masters EX Celebration. Several faces are going to be joining the game. Gita and Glimora, followed by Silver and Tyranitar, if that makes any sense to you. Pokemon Cafe Remix has added in the 3 starters from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You can play as them and craft some new meals, I guess. Pokemon Unite is adding some Pokemon Scarlet and Violet support as well. Miraidon, who is one of those first Pokemon, like legendary Pokemon that you meet, is available now. Phalanx is coming in April, and Ceruledge is coming soon. They also revealed that you can activate the code PokeDay24 in Pokemon Unite to give you 3-day limited license for Miraidon. They revealed that there's a new Pokemon trading card game coming to phones, which is called Pokemon Pocket. This is actually a pretty cool idea, but it's definitely going to be riddled with microtransactions. Essentially, every day you'll be able to open like 2 Pokemon card packs and then battle with your friends. Obviously, they're going to put in there that you can buy new packs with real money. It's just something that's going to happen. The cool thing about this, though, is it's kind of like the card, the real trading cards where there's special versions of cards, but in this, you can actually animate some of the cards, the more rare cards, I guess, which is kind of cool. I like the idea. I just know that's probably going to be a microtransaction riddled mess. It's coming in 2024, so we'll see, but it's one of those things that I'm not like super stoked about, because I like when I'm buying a Pokemon card pack myself, like, yeah, I'm getting the physical thing. In this digital space, you don't actually own that card. Once the app goes down, whenever that may be, you kind of lose all that investment that you put into it, which I kind of touched on this topic in the latest episode of Ferret Cafe, which is available now. But it's one of those things. Is like, it's not really like if I want to sell one of these freaking Pokemon cards for 50 cents, I can. In the digital space, I can't. So there's really no return for your investment there. The biggest announcement was the reveal of Pokemon Legends Z-A. I'm guessing Pokemon Legends Z, and there's also going to be Pokemon Legends A, I'm guessing, because they said it's going to be like a dual release. But essentially it's going to be in the Legend Arceus style, which is really cool. I like that idea. It's coming in 2024, which tells me that they're going to work more on the Pokemon games. Usually they do yearly releases, but that's pretty cool. It's going to take place almost entirely in Lumino City, which is from Pokemon X and Y, which is kind of cool as well. There will be Mega Evolutions making a comeback as well, which is pretty cool. I like that idea. I'm not a huge Pokemon guy, as you know. I've talked about Pokemon games before, and I used to be really into them with like Red and Ruby, but I like nowadays they just haven't transformed enough for me personally. I'm not a huge fan of them, but still, it was the big thing was the Legends ZA, which I think is going to be the big thing for next year. But everything else was just kind of like just little things for their other apps and stuff like that. It's almost not worth it to even do a Pokemon Presents, but I guess they gotta do it every year. On top of that, there was a NACON event which happened this past week. They revealed a couple of games here. I'm just gonna quickly go through them. Greedfall 2. The follow-up to the original game is coming in 2025 in early access on PC. No, I'm sorry, in 2025 for Xbox and PlayStation, but it's coming to PC early access in summer of 2024. The gameplay itself, well, I guess they really didn't show gameplay. It was mostly cinematics, but if the cinematics are in-game cutscene or whatever, I think that'd be kind of cool. Looks like they're putting more of an emphasis on the co-op nature of the game and the Souls nature of the game. but we'll see. We'll see. Another game called Welcome to Paradise. It's out now. We've kind of known about this game coming for a little while. It's like a top-down not third person, like a top-down shooter where you team up with your friends to defend against zombies. I think it's getting some good reviews so far. So I think people are relatively enjoying it. Kind of reminds me of that How to Survive the Zombie Apocalypse game or whatever that came out back in the day. But yeah, kind of interesting. Endurance Motorsport Series that got an announcement. I think this is just a car game, a racing game, obviously. They didn't show anything off about it, just the announcement that the game was coming. There was a montage of sports games. So the next Tour de France game, Tie Break, the official game of the ATP, which I think it's a tennis thing. Rugby 24, we're getting another rugby game. Pro Cycling Manager 2024, Session Skate Sim, and MXGP were all featured in this little World of Sports montage. I mean, they all look good and like decent. Like there's nothing stands out as super exceptional in my opinion. But like I said, they kind of all look relatively decent. Like am I gonna get rugby? I don't think so. Am I gonna get the bike games? Probably not. The skateboarding game, maybe. I don't know. It's one of those things that's like not like super crazy. I mean, the MXGP game kind of looks good. The graphics from a distance look pretty realistic, I guess you could say. But then again, like you zoom in and it doesn't look that good. But whatever. It was fine. Next game was called Crown Wars: The Black Princess, coming March 14th. Had a pretty nice trailer to it. I will admit, like the trailer was very nice. The gameplay itself, they showed little splashes of it. There's like a bear and whatever. I thought it looked kind of funny, but nothing. It didn't really make me jump out of my seat. There was another montage called Life Montage. This one included Ambulance Life, Taxi Life, Chef Life, and Garden Life, which is pretty crazy that there's so many games in this category. Chef Life looked fine. It's not as in-depth as Cooking Simulator, in my opinion, but it looks like it kind of looks like it's reminiscent of Cooking Mama almost, Taxi Life is the one that I was most interested in. It looks the best, and I think that having like the taxi, start off as a taxi driver and then build your empire in like this simulation game, kind of interesting. I've talked about it a couple times now. Ambulance Life coming in September. It has like the same graphics as Taxi Life, so I'm wondering if they're using the same engine or even possibly like similar assets for the game. This is one of those games that kind of like is coming out at a bad time for me. I can't get behind something like this right now. And then Garden Life actually is probably going to be a game that a lot of people are going to pick up because essentially you start off with like this rundown garden and you grow it into something beautiful, So I think that's probably going to be the most best-selling game out of these games. You could also win a custom OLED switch. I don't know if it's like actually a custom switch or if it's just like stickers on it, but it's kind of cute, I guess. Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown coming in 2024. This is a racing game on Hong Kong Island. Hong Kong Island has been recreated at a 1:1 scale, which is pretty cool in my opinion. You can race around the tracks. Well, I guess not tracks, but just like the island. Kind of reminds me of Horizons, the Horizon game that came out recently, where you kind of had full range of like an area, and like the races would just kind of start up when you pause, and there was like cars you could find and whatever. It seems pretty cool. I like the idea of actually taking like a full island and recreating it 1:1. That's very impressive. Another game called Dragonkin The Banished was announced, coming next year, 2025. Cutscene wise, visually looks great. They did not show any game. Well, I guess it showed a little bit of gameplay. It's pretty much a Diablo clone, I guess you'd say. Looks like it's a bit more action packed than Diablo, but Yeah, it's pretty much that. It's a top-down action RPG. The piece de resistance was Terminator Survivors, coming in early access in 2024. I think Kenobi posted this on the Discord as well. But essentially, it's a co-op or solo open-world survival game set in the world of Terminator in 1984. In this original story, it takes place after the first two films. You'll take control of a group of survivors who survived Judgment Day in solo or co-op. You're faced with blah, 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 blah. So it's pretty much like a survival crafting game, essentially. You go against Terminators, who obviously are going to be pretty hard to take down, I would guess. But, yeah, pretty interesting. I like that idea for the Terminator franchise. So there you go. The NACON event, I wasn't like super impressed with it, but it was still fun to watch, I guess. So here are the 4 games officially coming to Xbox. They were rumored to be coming, and now they've been confirmed. I'm sorry, not coming to Xbox, but releasing on other platforms outside of Xbox. So we already know about Grounded and Pentiment. Hi-Fi Rush is coming to PlayStation for sure, but we're not sure about Switch yet. And then Sea of Thieves is launching on all the different platforms, PlayStation and Switch. So those are 4 games that are Xbox owned and exclusives coming to other platforms. Pretty cool. They're coming pretty soon. I think Sea of Thieves is really going to get a nice second wind after it releases. I mean, especially after Skull and Bones kind of unimpressed the majority of people out there. Having Sea of Thieves come to the platform after that is really going to sink that game, I think, in my opinion. And that's not a pun. I've been playing Sea of Thieves on and off here, and it has kind of become a bit of a grind here and there. But once you grind to get a better ship, then it becomes fun again, because you can just go around and battle ships and not have to worry about, being sunk in 2 seconds. You can actually battle ships and fortresses like that. But obviously, Sea of Thieves, as I've already said before, Sea of Thieves and Assassin's Creed 4 does the thing better. And I think Sea of Thieves coming out on other platforms here is really just gonna bury Skull and Bones. There were 2 games that were pretending to be Helldivers 2 on Steam, trying to scam people. Essentially, the games, the 2 indie titles, which were named Figularity, which was by Solo on Board Studio, and a game called Do Not Smile by White Hole Games. They had their pages completely edited to look like the popular co-op shooter. The metadata was changed, including game title, description, publisher, and developer information, along with all the screenshots as well. It was pretty much identical to the official listing for Helldivers 2. Obviously, it was discovered pretty quickly that these were scams. They put their games on sale for $12.49 and whatever each. So people bought them and realized it wasn't the right game, got a refund, reported to Steam. Steam does have a lot of checks and balances for this stuff, so it's hard to believe that 2 different studios got away with this, but not for long, I guess. I've never really seen something like this happen, where the game pretends to be a different game. I mean, I've seen like bad screenshots and stuff that don't show the true game, but this is a different level, and it's kind of scary, but at least it was snuffed out pretty quickly, and people got their money back. Crash Bandicoot developers Toys for Bob have split from Activision and Xbox. As I reported last time on the podcast, Toys for Bob was, maybe it wasn't last time, but Toys for Bob was affected by layoffs. I don't think the studio was completely shut down, but it was pretty close to being. They are going independent, though. They're splitting from Microsoft. They still want to work within the IP that Microsoft owns, but they don't want to be under the Activision or Microsoft banner completely. So they're open to working with Microsoft, but they don't want to be under that banner anymore. In a release on Twitter, they said, over the years we've inspired love, joy, and laughter for the inner child in all gamers. We've pioneered new IP and hardware technologies in Skylanders. We've raised the bar for the best-in-class remasters in Spyro and Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. We've taken Crash Bandicoot to innovative and critically acclaimed new heights with Crash Bandicoot 4. With the same enthusiasm and passion, we believe that now is the time to take the studio and our future games to the next level. Yes, this opportunity allows us to return to our roots of being a small and nimble studio. To make the news even more exciting, we're exploring a possible partnership between our studio and Microsoft. And while we're in the early days of developing our next new game and a ways from making any announcements, our team is excited to develop new stories, new characters, and new gameplay experiences. Yeah, they don't bad talk Activision or anything like that, but you can tell that they were really hoping to be switched over to something that they were comfortable working on. They've been working on Warzone for so long, and I think once Microsoft bought them and said, you're being laid off or you're staying on what you're staying on, I think that kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back. Tours for Bob did work on a Crash Bandicoot game, though, Crash Team Rumble, but unfortunately, Crash Team Rumble is already shutting down. It'll have its final update on March 4th. It'll be the final content drop for the game. The game will still remain active and available to play. Also, the 500 tier free battle pass will still be available as well. That includes over 100 items. But the game is not going to be getting any more updates or seasonal content as well. More so, the Crash Coin microtransactions are being turned completely off, so you won't be able to buy anything with real money anymore. So you could, purchase items, tier skips in the battle pass, which was, obviously not a good idea. This game never really popped off. I thought it was fun for what I played, and I bought the game for like $30 when it came out, but it's one of those things that's like, you really just should have done a new Crash Bandicoot game. Like, this was fine. It was kind of fun, but it really didn't have the staying power it needed. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Diving deeper, Embracer Group is selling studios. Saber is the first studio, Saber Interactive. This is the one that's working on, or was working on, the Knights of the Old Republic remake, which apparently is still in development. I mean, I want to see it to believe it, but whatever. The deal is, Saber is essentially being sold off for $500 million. Saber actually comprises of more than 20 studios, which will all be sold off to private investors once the deal closes. Saber is the studio behind many different games like World War Z, the video game, Evil Dead, the video game, SnowRunner. They publish titles like Teardown and Redout 2, and they're working on projects like Jurassic Park Survival, John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, and the new Space Marine 2 game, as well as the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. Other studios are also breaking off of Embracer, who has shown to not be that great at what they do. Like the Gearbox is breaking off with the Borderlands IP. Also, Remedy is breaking off as well. And they will still have control of their IP control, which is good for them. That's good for them. So we'll see what happens after this. But as of right now, lots of companies breaking off from Embracer who really just were shitting the bed. EA has laid off about 700 jobs in another round of industry layoffs, and that's not it, folks. PlayStation has also laid off almost 900 employees as well. Both major studios are trimming down their workforce, which that's over 1,000 jobs lost. That's 1,600, and that's just really, really, really hard to see. The EA one was most notably. I'm not going to say it was worse, but it was almost a bit more detrimental to their image because they laid off people who were working inside of Respawn on a first-person Star Wars game, which it was rumored to be a Mandalorian game, and people were very excited to see that because we really haven't had a first-person shooter Star Wars game in quite some time. But Respawn has been like the blood of EA. Like, it's the most creative part of EA. Yes, it's working on Star Wars right now, but the Star Wars games have been good. They're a bit buggy, but they've been good. And the Titanfall series obviously is a staple in people's hearts. So it's really unfortunate to see them, take jobs away from Respawn. They made a claim that they were working on moving towards focusing on the sports games and whatever, which is also really sad because their sports games have not been up to snuff for quite some time. In a statement by Andrew Wilson, the CEO of the company, he said they are deeply they deeply considered every option to try and limit impacts on teams, but you know, they weren't able to do that. And along with the layoffs at PlayStation, which affected studios like Guerrilla, Santa Monica, etc. On top of all that, Supermassive Games also suffered layoffs. 90 people's jobs were affected. It was just announced that they were working on a remake of Until Dawn, and they were also working on a new game. And in a post on the Twitter account, they just kind of laid it out for everyone. The really heartbreaking thing is that PlayStation, of all companies, cutting people out of these big studios that are working on their big games, they posted on Twitter like it was like some sort of announcement, you know? Like, it was just kind of a weird thing, and you expect better from PlayStation, especially because I talk so highly of so many of their games and their studios. They've also canceled multiple projects now. So 900 people lost their jobs inside of PlayStation. Like I said, the layoffs impacted Insomniac, Guerrilla Games, Santa Monica Studios, and Naughty Dog. And some unannounced projects have been canceled. I'm guessing one of those projects is the Last of Us, the Last of Us multiplayer game that we kind of knew was canceled, but you know. Also inside of the video game universe, Deck 9, who works on the Life is Strange games, laid off about 20% of its staff. So I think this puts us over 8,000 jobs lost since the beginning of the year, which is just insane. It's really sad to see so many of these people very passionate about the games they were working on and stuff like that. It's just that's a lot of people losing their jobs. I mean, that's a significant chunk of workforce just being stripped out of the gaming landscape, you know, and not everyone can go and form their own studio. Like Toys for Bob, it's lucky that they can pick up the pieces and keep going, you know. But there's a lot of people who maybe they haven't proven themselves in the gaming landscape, or maybe they're not a part of a bigger group like Toys for Bob that was all let go at once. It's just one of those things it's so sad to see. And unfortunately, there's really nothing that we can do. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think it's time for the video game landscape to unionize, and of course, that's gonna impact. You know, if they do strike, it's obviously going to impact when we get games. But at this point, I think the people are more important than the games that they are making, and I think studios or publishers, the owners of these development studios, have lost that. They don't see them as people. They see them as, oh, put out this game, make us money, you're expendable. People are not expendable. And the creative vision behind games are what sells the games, not really. Like, the games themselves are products of that vision of these studios. And removing the vision, removing the people who innovate is just not the way to do it. Let's try and switch over to something a bit more positive. Rise of Ronin, which is a highly anticipated game coming out of PlayStation and coming out of Team Ninja, who was not affected by the layoffs. They revealed all the different combat styles for Rise of Ronin, and they're looking really cool. Now, these are videos that were on PlayStation Japan. I don't know if they have an American version or an English version. I'm sorry. But it showed off the different play styles for each of the different builds, and it's looking really good, guys. Like, some people are complaining about how the animations look. I don't think they look that bad at all, honestly. I mean, they look actually pretty nice in my opinion, but of course, it's just my opinion. The first one they showed off was Bayonet, which is a musket with a bayonet on the end. So you can kind of use the musket to shoot people, but you can also use it to, like, stab and keep them at bay, which it just looks really slick. I love that. I love the gameplay. Dual swords technique, obviously, it's exactly as it sounds. You use the two swords to fight people. They showed off like this like grapple hook that he can use to like grab the enemy as well. So it's very much like, yeah, sure, it's kind of like Ghost of Tsushima based in reality, but there's still some kooky stuff like Neo, that like what Neo does in it as well, which I think is going to give it a really nice style altogether. But yeah, the combat, I mean, it looks great. I love the dual swords. It looks pretty cool. Long range. This is entirely new style of class that we've not seen in many Souls games. I mean, obviously the Remnant series has this, but essentially it's a full-fledged, long-ranged, using a musket kind of style for the gameplay, where you use the musket to shoot the enemies, and then you roll out of the way when they attack you. There's also a bow and arrow as well, so it's not just the musket, but there's a bow and arrow. I believe there's also a pistol as well that you can use. There's also Shuriken and Kiruki. Am I saying that right? You do have a sword too. You can almost do like the Jedi Survivor technique of having a sword and a pistol, which is also so fucking cool. I cannot wait to play this game. On top of that, there's a long sword technique, which is just it's a big sword. What more do I have to say to you? It's just a big sword, and you can hit multiple people with it. There's also the Naginata, which is like a spear with a very like big sword end on it. Looks pretty cool too. It's got an entirely different fighting style as well. All these look very visually distinct. The Odachi, which is actually what I use in my Neo run right now. It's a very heavy, long sword. You use two hands to grip it and move it around. It looks very cool as well. The spear, it's exactly what you expect it to be. It's a long range, not long range, but it's got a nice reach to it, and it's got a nice style to it as well. And then finally, there's the basic sword, where it's like a katana. You use the katana to slice people up. I mean, all these look so cool, and I hate to talk about this directly after talking about how shitty PlayStation was recently, but this game is looking great. And this is more of a Team Ninja game than PlayStation anyways, even though it is coming to just PlayStation for right now. I think that this is going to definitely be a hit this year. It's looking really good. Definitely check out this stuff if you want to check that out. Peacemaker is coming to Mortal Kombat 1. I believe he's already in the game, if I'm not mistaken. But he is... he's sharing the likeliness of John Cena, and he is also voiced by John Cena as well, which is really nice. He entered early access, but he is officially been released since the 28th of February. His moveset looks really good. His finish him move, not my favorite thing ever, but everything else is so good about how they designed the character. From the different moveset that he has. He has the eagle come in and help him out too. It's just one of those things that's just very cool. They also revealed that his cameo fighter coming along with him was Janet Cage. I don't know much about her. I think she's from a game that I never played, but pretty cool. There's also a bunch of different things that people were either buffed or nerfed in the recent patch for it as well. So I think that it's a really cool character inclusion in the game. It's really nice that they got his likeness and him to voice the character. So pretty cool. An old school point and click game is another one's coming over to the Switch here soon. It's called Freddy Fish: The Case of the Missing Kelp Seeds. We've been seeing these games pop up every so often. Some of them in dual packs, some of them on their own. This is one that's coming on its own, and it's already available now if you want to check it out, if you remember this game from your past. It's going to be about $12 on the Switch eShop. I think it's also on Steam as well. Let me check the end of the video here. I just see Nintendo, so maybe it is just Nintendo right now? I'm not sure. In the press release, they said Grandma Grouper's kelp seeds are missing, and without them, all the sea creatures will go hungry. Help underwater detective Freddy Fish and her finny friend Luther solve the case. So yeah, it's just another of the point and click adventure games that were very popular back in the day, and yeah, whatever. What do you want me to say? Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is officially up for pre-order on different websites, and it's going to be $60, which is pretty freaking crazy if you ask me. I understand it's Nintendo, and they did work redoing the visuals, I guess, but the game is still like a 3DS port, essentially. I mean, yeah, sure, they did whatever, but this should really be like a $40 launch game. I mean, Mario vs. Donkey Kong was like $50 when it released, and that was worth it. So we'll have to wait and see if this was worth the $60 price tag, but they haven't shown anything about the game yet. Like, there's barely been any information about it, if there's anything new in there or whatever. It just seems a little bit weird to me. On the other side of that, the Thousand Year Door remake or remaster is $6, which I think is fair. I think that's actually a good price point for a remake of a game that's highly sought after. I understand them upping the price because we're not putting it at like $50 or whatever because of how many people want this. But the Luigi's Mansion 2 HD version of the game, I mean, just the title alone, like it's not a remake or a remaster, it's just an HD re-release. That I think that's going to turn a lot of people off, and it's already turned me off a little bit. So I'll probably pick it up on sale eventually down the road, but you know. EA College Football. There's been a couple of things talked about around the game. The main thing is that all 134 teams are going to be in the game. Players who allow their likeliness to be in the game will get $600 and a copy of the game. They can opt in via the Compass NIL app. More than 11,000 players are expected to be put into the game. People who are not in the game will not be able to be played as. They'll just be like a generic character, of course. As of right now, there will be no real coaches in the game either, at least at the beginning. Maybe through updates they'll add them. Only FBS teams will be in the first installment of the game, so more teams will likely follow. Players who are in the Army, Navy, or Air Force version of the game will be in it, but they will not be compensated for their inclusion. The game is going to be completely different than Madden. Now, that's not an official quote. That is just from whoever's Twitter account this is, but they've apparently gotten word that the game is going to be completely different than Madden, which I'll have to see to believe. I'll be honest with you. They've already gotten players like Kirk Herbstreit, Desmond Howard, and Reese Davis in the game already. So there you go. Apparently there will be no creative character, though, which is kind of weird, but there you go. Rounding out this here, we got the PlayStation VR 2 is going to be available to be used on PC sometime in the future. They are currently testing the ability of the PSVR 2 to access the PC and play games on PC, which will add more variety in addition to the PSVR 2 titles available through the PS5. They say that support will be available sometime in 2024, so stay tuned for updates. I think that's a great idea. It is a USB-C connection, so if your computer has USB-C, you're good to go pretty much. I've played with the Oculus Quest 2 on my PC. It works fine. It's not the most amazing experience because it's not designed for that, but it's still pretty good, and I think the PlayStation VR 2 will be about the same. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I don't know why it's at the end here. Shadow of the Erdtree is the new DLC coming to Elden Ring, as we already know. It officially got a release date and a trailer, which looks great. This is going to be a $40 DLC, which is much more than I was expecting. But if the game is the size of Limgrave, as they've already said, that'll be a pretty decent haul, a very decent part of the map. Obviously, there's whole new enemies. I believe there's 13 new bosses that await you as well, along with some new weapons and stuff like that. I am currently on New Game Plus 1 with my character, so I'm in the perfect place to play this. People are speculating that you need to have defeated Mog in order to access the DLC, because the first part of the trailer shows the arm reaching out of the egg that's in his battle arena. So you probably will have to at least defeat Mog in order to access the Land of Shadow, is what they're calling it. So looks pretty good. Yeah, like I said, it's $40, so it's pretty much like its own standalone game almost. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. To wrap it up here, here's the PlayStation Plus games for March. We have Sifu for both PlayStation 5 and 4, F123 for both PS5 and PS4, Hello Neighbor 2 for both PS5 and PS4, and Destiny 2 The Witch Queen expansion for both PS4 and PS5. I said that backwards for no reason at all. Sifu, great fighting game, pretty hardcore, has some stuff in there to help you get along though. F123 racing game, not really big into that one. Hello Neighbor 2, pretty negative reviews from what I've seen. So, Destiny 2 The Witch Queen, not big on Destiny. Haven't played it since its launch. So whatever. But Sifu does kind of hold this up. That's a pretty good game if you haven't played that. Everything else is just kind of like, okay, whatever. Not the best haul, but whatever. And these will be available on March 5th. And then here are 3 games leaving Xbox Game Pass in March that we know of. On March 15th, all 3 of these games are going to leave, including Hardspace Shipbreaker, Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch Remastered, and Shredders are all leaving. So that is that. If you want to check out any of that stuff, go do what you want. All right, folks. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. I'm YemmytheFerret, and I'm out of here. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.